Hello, today we're going to talk about human rights. I am Ricardo Lopez and my partner is Loreta Montiel. It is jealous to anchor our illusion in the main assumptions that human rights certification implies, especially with respect to those who currently find a controversial interview internally in the area of philosophy. In an outgoing work, the author, in agreement with the ideas of different declarations of human rights, argues that these are not exclusively a positive legal tool, but also fortune, and mainly a high human trophy based on the wisdom and appointment of the adornment and decisions inherent in the individual. Human rights are the guardians and the safe asset of the people, as well as the national and supranational communities. This ratification should be thought of as a premise to be developed briefly in the work. One of the most important considerations that can originate approximately from its legal instruments is the acquired justice that is had of the human tributes in the current stage. In their achievement and perseverance, they argue not only specialists, philosophers, and jurists, journalists who frequently publish a variety that defies the essays of experts on sympathy and conflict with a flat ticket of public esteem and common curse. Perhaps it is possible to descend to the majority by identifying human rights with exchange of any kind of variety of live shows that serve as instruments for the safeguarding and assurance of liveliness in common. The complacency of commotion whose criticism is enough, although obviously not justifiable, since the great one originates in the nobility of the existence of movement that any direct has with the documentation to man. Human rights are the idea of many things, while the condition that each person has or should have an axiological teleology is what has induced the attention of the human man or woman, in its philosophical sense. That is, it has raised the concept when I was a boy as a man or a woman. Therefore, it has been affirmed up to now that a boy is someone insofar as he has a tendency to obtain a value, to objectify it in a concrete and personal acts and values. If human rights, in preference to fundamentalism and aspiration for happiness, do we result in irreconcilable contradictions? Nor are they, after all, a protection against the extra energy? In his analysis, Karl Marx described the peculiar common sense of energy as excessive, via way of means of nature itself. In the 18th Brumaire, the Magnificence War in France complicated of a dialectically okay the common sense of social illustration, political retailers that represent lessons and monetary forces. In doing so, he controlled to go past the standard perception of these complications, in keeping with which political illustration never immediately displays the social structure. It means that even as the chief thinks he situated above magnificence interests, its on-the-spot social base cannot be aside from the residual excremental of all kinds, the declassified rejected from every magnificence, and, as Marx reveals in every other passage, it's miles this help of the social object, the only that permits Bonaparte to extract his position at your comfort, and take turns representing a magnificence in opposition to every other. Personally, I agree with the position that human rights are the guardian and the safe asset of the people as well as of the national and supranational communities, since other things derive from this, such as acquired justice. What the author comments from his point of view of what human rights are seems to me to be quite congruent and well argued, since he gives examples, gives references to facts, etc. I identify the beliefs of what he has been on this subject, the vision he has of how he talks about the subject. His argumentation is quite logical since he did not focus on his ideas or his opinion. Rather, he included sources, facts, and he argues them completely. I open the quote, human rights are the guardians and the safe asset of the people, thus as well as national and supranational communities. This ratification should be thought of as a premise to be developed briefly in the work. End quote. Not only this gives a complete argument, it also includes an example so that the reader can better understand what is being talked about. In this other argument, several things can be observed. The author focused more on giving Marx's opinion. I open the quote. He described the peculiar common sense of energy as excessive through the means of nature itself, and as Marx reveals in all other passages, this help of the social object is the only one that allows Bonaparte to draw his position to his comfort and take turns to represent magnificence in front of everyone else. End quote. The interpretation of this person I consider that is not entirely true, and that it is necessary to provide argumentation and information. The problem that I would like to talk about is the fact that human rights currently moral, legal, and political implications, which leads us to the question of whether it will be possible to have a universal ethic that can be shared by every human being, no matter the community or traditions, and that it allows to promote certain values around the world. The area of philosophy that is the most useful to analyze this problem is ethics, since it literally involves the concepts that are part of the definition of human rights: values, obligations, duties, oughts, rights, morals, etc. This area consists of the basic study of ethics, and its central question is: what is the nature of the life of excellence? Social justice and human rights have a fairly common goal: human dignity equally for all. The problems that restrict the fulfillment of social justice, which includes poverty, exclusion, and discrimination, are in direct contradiction to human rights, which affect everyone indiscriminately. Human rights can help fight dignity and care for the good of its citizens. For example, it is necessary to guarantee all the appropriateness for suitability as part of the recognition of human dignity. Aristotle insisted, and Grotius admitted, that justice proper is only a limited part of morality. Hence, the assumption that both rights and justice reflect the natural law, even if true, does not imply any necessary connection between them, for they may be grounded in different parts of the law. For justice seems by its very nature to concern the distribution of burdens or benefits, not the sum total of burdens or benefits, but I cannot see how this implies that the expression "a right must" or even can be defined in terms of justice. What does seem to follow is that the allocation of rights, however defined, to the members of any society ought to be governed by the principles of justice, whatever this may be. This is a normative rather than a logical or conceptual connection between rights and justice. Personally, I think that rights and justice arise from the same part of or natural aspect of the law. What Hart and others have pointed out that the concept of law is essentially distributive concept in contrast to added concepts such as social utility. My right to life is quite different from your right to life, but my well-being and their well-being becomes indistinguishable in the sum total of the well-being enjoyed in our society. Thank you so much for listening, and that is all for us.